Hey, I'm just making this introduction real quick because I forgot to make one when I film. So just to say real quick that this video is going to be a breakdown of a music video I filmed with the artist Ankvin. If you're interested in that, keep watching. Thanks a lot. Like and subscribe. And the story I'm about to tell you started like a lot of typical teenage romance. I was mindlessly browsing Instagram hashtag Vancouver music scene. A lot of those 3 or 4 musician posting 7 times a day. But one of these person caught my attention. His name is Ankvin. I sent him a DM. Hey man, love your music. He answered, hey man, love your videos. And I was like, hey, let's go grab a coffee. He was like, hey, good idea. So a couple days later, we went at a coffee shop and we grabbed the coffee. Socially distant and sanitized. So yeah, during that coffee, we talked a lot about music, video, music, cinema, music, and music. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, hey, you know what? Let's make a music video together. I like your music. You like my video. And it was like, you know what? I'm releasing a single. And I was like, how down are you? He was like, I'm very down. I was like, are you waking up at 4 a.m. and filming in Gastown type of down? And it was like, yeah. And the day after, at 4 a.m., he was at my doorstep. I was like, cool. So I went down and we started filming. So I'm going to play the video in a couple of seconds. Well, please stay with me afterwards because I'm going to break it down for you cinematographer people that like music video. So please enjoy and see you in a couple of minutes. Moment of silence. Moment of silence.
Я и весь твой дружный бомон. Все собрались послушать твой прелестный монолог. Только есть одна проблема, что ты не берешь в учет. В деталях уже знаем, что ты скажешь наперед. Скажешь, что любви не стало, и что секс уже не тот. И что мама с папой парни тебе лучшего найдет. Да, мы расстались, это моя заслуга. Но ведь я хотя бы трахнул свою лучшую подругу. Ничего, ничего, ничего не вернуть назад. Мы далеки, как будто ничего, ничего, ничего не вернуть назад. Мы далеки, как будто миры на разных полюсах. Не боюсь
I really hope you enjoyed it because I poured a lot of myself into that video. So yeah, let's break it down. This music video was kind of one of those ideas that really developed as we film. So after we said that we were going to make a music video, we took a quick 30 minutes to listen to his rough song. So we went through the meaning of the song and we decided that he would play the role of his emotion, not himself. With that in mind, we did kind of a quick draft of what the movement in the music video would be like and what type of scene we would want. So with that in mind, we said bye-bye, went our separate ways, and I listened to his song like 500 times during that day, non-stop, to kind of like feel the vibe, feel the movement in the song. So I came home, put my notepad on my desk, I went on shot deck and, took some scene I thought were looking good. I wanted to get inspired with the colors. So the day after, I had my mood board, a draft of the music video, and we went and gassed down and started shooting. And even though we only met less than 24 hours prior to shooting a music video, we really clicked and he trusted me with my ideas. And everything was obviously shot with my Ursa Mini Pro G2. We didn't have a big budget, so I only used my Sigma 1835. And I used a Tiffin Pro Mist filter, either a quarter or a half, depending on the scene, depending on how much halation I wanted around the highlights. Everything handheld, no gimbal, no stabilizer. We wanted a very raw, very like dynamic feel, almost like 16 millimeter film, very grainy, very gritty, very like dirty feel. It developed these big muscles. Let's get straight into DaVinci and break it down scene by scene. So here is my project. As you can see, this is my master here. And upper left corner, you have like all my footage. This is a lot of timeline because we did a lot of goofiness, like him telling jokes. We also did 4 little clips that were meant to. Filming in a bar was impossible, so we decided to go on a SkyTrain, and we decided to not drink in the SkyTrain because it's illegal and we didn't want to get in trouble. So we just started with him looking kind of desperate. The idea was that he is not himself, he is his emotions. So at the beginning, it's him being the emotion, and the emotion doesn't know really how to feel. So he's in this public transit. You see like all the color here. All the highlights are really yellow. His skin tone is kind of weird, kind of off. Everything is a little bit off and dark and grainy. So as you can see, there is a slight push in the scene. A lot of blur around, like everything he does is kind of blurry, kind of eerie. And then snap. This little scene here is a couple frames of just him being like, what the hell? And it's also foreshadowing of what's going to happen afterward. It's just like to pique a little bit of interest in the audience. And as you can see, the color here is very blue, very sicklish. So this was meant to kind of contrast with the rest of the music video, which is kind of very saturated. And it has a lot of movement in the color, so we'll get into that later. So here, as I said, first act is just very mellow. We wanted to be very mellow. There is no writing. There's nothing that really explains what it is. It's kind of like what's happening. Why is he there? Why is he just in the SkyTrain looking out? Looking kind of lost and drunk. And to achieve this effect, it's manifold. So first it was
film in the SkyTrain because the SkyTrain has this sickly yellow color. We went at a very particular hour because we wanted to have the very bluish sky, almost no sun. It's called nautical twilight. So we wanted that to fit the theme of the song and to contrast with the very harsh, sickly neon light of the SkyTrain. After, there is the fusion effect. First note here, which is your media in. And then you have a tracker here, which is a very simple tracker, nothing special. I tracked his ear. It's kind of what is in the center of the frame here. And then here, afterward, you go here, match move, background only. It makes it kind of so you tell the software that I want is here to be at this place, and it's gonna track the frame around. The effect of the tracker in that scene is very subtle, but you can kind of see the push in it's a digital zoom, and the push in is really on the center of his face, and it's kind of this whole tracker is what does this blurriness because it tries to follow him, and since he's moving, there's a lot of artifact, and I wanted to exploit this type of artifact in that scene because it's very eerie, it's very dreamy, you're sicklish again, so it's kind of nauseous almost. So we're gonna look at that. Here you see that his face is warping. So that's what I use the tracker for, to get this effect. And now we're gonna go into color. I'm gonna decompose a color scene by scene because there is quite a bit of change in every scene because the color moves with the music video and is there to enhance the vibe. So as you can see here, here is my, on the lower right hand, this is my parade. I always use my scopes. Never rely on your screen. Scopes are what are gonna tell you the truth. So if we do a little before after, this is before, as you can see. So my first note, it goes and brings it all to a bluer tone. Everything was too warm, and this, I wanted it to be blue. And here, as you can see, I added a little bit of contrast, just a little bit of pop. As you can see here in my scopes, everything is a little bit blue. The red is a little bit lower, which means that it is colder. And then here is one of the magic trick I use, and I really like, is the glow effect. It's very subtle, but what it does, it blooms the highlight even more. I use the 1/4 Pro Mist filter, and this is enhancing that. And here, that's the base of the look. I injected a lot of green in the shadow and a lot of yellow in the highlights. It's very pale, very vintagey, and his skin tone is way off. So I went here and qualified his skin tone and brought it back to something a little bit more human while still maintaining this kind of green in the shadows. Afterward, I used a little radial blur. Close that. I wanted to be focused on him, and I wanted to have this kind of eerie, weird vibe, so I added this blur here. Then I went in, added a little bit of grain, and here I went and put a lot of contrast because here it's very faded, the shadows are very green, and here the shadows are barely green, barely a lick of green. Always want to have my grade powerful yet subtle, and this is what this is, powerful yet subtle to me. And then second here, the second clip, I wanted to give something to the viewer to kind of wake them up after this kind of long introduction. And this is also where there is this ha in the song, and it goes on to the rest of the song. And then here, the second phase of the music video, just after this very like bam, we go in the actual story. It's more active, it's handheld, it's very shaky, and we wanted it. There's a lot of emotion, and it's kind of going in waves, so you'll see. Here, he's running on these yellow, and everything is very bluish because it was cold. We wanted to have this cold vibe, which would contrast with these orange light that you see in Gas Down. I wanted it to look like he's running aimlessly. He doesn't know where he's going, because after you're lost in your emotion, you go in this kind of like, what the hell am I doing with my life? I lost this amount of time in this relationship and now in pain, and I want to kind of go in denial. So this is what this is. Him running around aimlessly, not knowing what's happening. I just have to say here, he doesn't smoke. He started smoking only for the music video because in his head, smoking kills. It's not a good thing. It's a very bad behavior, but it represents the pain and kind of death. Yeah, so he just smoked for the video. So let's resume. And here we're in another section in terms of color. So we'll analyze the second part here. Everything here is blue because blue is a very lonely color. It's a very cold color. Then we go here. There is these orange, glowing orange bulbs, which add a lot of contrast to the blue. That's why we shot the scene there. And yet again, you see here on the side of his face, a lot of orange. The rest is very blue. I wanted to keep this to separate him from the background and not be too monotonous, not be too monochromatic. I wanted to add this duality in terms of like color, cold, warm. It adds a lot of dimension to the image. And if we go here in the color grading section, my first node here, as you can see, yet again, I injected quite a bit of blue. In the mid-tone, I added a bunch of, a little bit more warmth because I wanted this contrast. And then the highlight are a touch blue again. And then the saturation is at 70.8 or 70, who cares. Color boost -4. Then second node here is my first layer of contrast. I always use my second node to kind of bring my image to a more workable place. Contrast 1.142, pivot 515. Then my classic glow, as you can see here, the glow. This is what I use to give this glow in the highlight, and it crunches the shadows a little bit as well. Gives it this three-dimensional pop. Here is the look, what I like to call. Then I took my whole image and crushed it. I underexposed it in this node, and then here I went and worked on the skin again, because you always have a different node for your skin tone, because you don't want your skin tone to be dictated solely by your look. In that case, I wanted it to be a little bit warmer because I want his skin to pop out of the blue of the rest of the image. And then here, grain, because the image is grainy, and here, yet again, a little bit more contrast. So I crushed the image a little bit. I wanted my black to be very on the lick of pure black. I always wanted to have that fade. And yet again, if you look at my parade, it's a very cold image. My blue are a little bit higher than my red. Then we moved that. It's basically the same grade, but there is no contrast in terms of color. So that's why everything is very flat. That's wanted. We want him to be oppressed by his surrounding. And then we moved to this part. So I went with a greenish tone. It's very subtle, yet it tells a story with the color. Then he jumps, looks out, he's out of focus, looks at the pier. It's a very gloomy day. That's what I wanted, and that's why we went and filmed at 4 a.m. to have this kind of feeling. Everything is grimy. It's a pier. It's not beautiful. In terms of color grade, same thing here. This is the before, this is the after. As you can see, yet again, overexposed a little bit. Very orange because it was lit by some fluorescent light in the parking lot. This is a kind of underground tunnel and also a parking lot. It's a weird place. And here, yet again, put a little bit more blue in the shadows, contrast, glow. Then here, put all the image in darkness. Here, a vignette because you want it to pop out. You don't want him to be lost too much in the shadows. A little bit of grain and last little lick of balance in the image because I wanted to yet again have this almost crushed shadow but with a lick of details. And then next scene is him running towards someone and he's about to pick a fight. Yet again, it's his emotion. He's fighting with his emotion. So as you can see, first part of the fight scene is him smoking a cigarette and looking very decisive. He's about to pick a fight. So he walks here, dam, 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 bang, flip the hat. This guy, funny, I was like, you look a little bit badass. You look like you could be a crazy guy. I need you in my music video. He used to be a soccer player. He's about to pick a fight. It was funny. We did that like 25 times because you cannot fight your friends and they laugh, but it was fun. Here, flip the cigarette in a very ballsy move, blow his smoke at the guy, start to pick a fight, and just when it's synchronized with the movement of the music. So you have this kind of like dun, 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 dun. That it builds a tension. So I wanted to build that tension here. And then, boom, do, 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 do. I used a 360 shutter speed to have a lot more blur so we wouldn't see their faces. So in the action, looks like they're really mad. Yet again here, this is Logan. He looks kind of like a killer. It's very blurry and you don't see their faces because they were laughing all the time. Pushes a guy, boom, falls on the floor. You can see everything is very green, very sicklish. There's a lot of dirt here. We made sure that there were no needles because we were in Chinatown and there are needles everywhere. If you look closely, you see a little bit of crack paper that people used to smoke crack, a bunch of cigarettes, a lot of dirt. And then you see here, he goes and picks up the coat, shoom, and throws it on the guy's face. Here, same thing, my color grade is pretty much similar to everything else. I added a little bit more green this time because I like this kind of sicklish green. It make you feel bad, and that's what I wanted. Slightly overexposed. Here, pull everything back to kind of a bluer, greener, and then more contrast. Here, the classic glow. This node is where all the magic happened. You'll see, boom, everything goes to a very dark, gritty, dirty, green offset. So this node has two purposes. As you can see here, everything is very washed out, very monochromatic. I wanted the wall to pop and the skin to pop because otherwise there is nothing that catches your eyes. So boom. It's very subtle, but everything now is warmer and there is almost no blue in those reds. Classic grain, and here is a little bit more contrast in the shadow because it's a very dark, gritty scene, and I wanted it to be dark and gritty. We use that code as a transition from this part of the music to the next one. Then, what the hell? He wakes up. You don't really know why he wakes up in a car. And the color, as you can see, changed drastically. Now it's almost like more like an expired Fujifilm stock. You see the frame here. He's under his coat. He's like, what's happening? There's wood here, a plastic bash. You're like, why is there that? You wake up after fighting with your emotion. You're lost. Here you almost have a sign of hope because the color are warmer, more lively, and you're not as sickly. As you can see here, let's start from here. He wakes up in the car, you don't know what's happening, and he's like, what the hell? Clap, clap. He's in a car somewhere in a forest road next to a mountain. You don't know what's happening. He's lost. I decided to film that in a long take with handheld, no stabilization. I wanted it to be shaky. He's like, what the hell? What's happening? He realizes he's in a car. He tries to escape. I have to point out here that there is this bottle of Powerade, which at first I thought was a genius idea. It's a kidnapper's van. Every kidnapper drinks Powerade. To me, it added to the story, but now I'm like, I should not have done that. And it's a lesson learned. You always learn. And now he's like escaping the car. And then we go to the next scene in a second. I still want to show you my color grade. As you can see, the grade is warmer. It's a very green and yellow. The anger dissipates a little bit, so it goes from this almost monochromatic green to this warmth that is kind of a sign of hope. So he's lost, but he feels better. He feels like he's about to conquer his emotion. That's why everything is warmer. I wanted to have a lot of detail in the window, so I had to be careful not to overexpose this. So for this scene, I didn't use the same method of grading as the other ones because I wanted to go for a very specific effect. And I know that this LUT, the buttery LUT for the Ursa Mini Pro G2, -1 contrast because I want to have a lot of leeway for my color grade. I felt like this LUT was very useful for this specific scene. Here, I open up my shadows and lower my highlights. I want to have in this one, I wanted to have a very open and lighter feel. And then the classic glow here, you can see it around the window. It's glowing and it crushes the shadows a little bit. And that's why I opened them up in the previous node. And here is my skin tone. And as you can see here, it's not exactly the same node tree. This is my look. I injected a lot of blue, qualified the skin tone on that one, then modify my color. It's very subtle. Takes the skin to a very yellow and red to a more beige, so more even. And here, a lot of grain. And here, this is where the last touch happens. I'm adding the contrast back. So as you can see here, everything is very dirty, especially shadow and the highlights. You can see a lot of grain in the highlights. I want it to be very grainy yet again, even if he's getting in a better place now. Let's move on to the next scene, which is he's escaping the car. Boom. This is the rap part. Let's watch it and we'll decompose it afterwards. So here, as you can see, I use the same trick, which is a tracker as the first node here, but here I tracked his mouth because I wanted his mouth to be in the center. So I tracked his mouth. It made it for this effect where he's switching between the asphalt and the grass. They both complement each other, although they contrast a lot. And as you can see, if I switch from frame to frame, his mouth is always in the middle. This part was used as a contrast in the song. He goes from this very airy, very light feel to this very down to earth, very like bassy. And I wanted my music to reflect that. So we created this cut between where he's escaping the car in the light, then he's rapping, and the cement is a big contrast with the grass, because in this part he's explaining how everything is getting better even if it hurts. So the cement is like harsh and the grass is softer, and you can kind of see the way he's looking more aggressive in the cement part and the grass part, which is very important to me. It ends up from the cement part, and it was important for me to have this green, blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, blue, and green. For me, it was important because it shows that it's intentional. It's not a mistake. We didn't just shoot anything and cross our finger. I'm just going to decompose the grade of this part. Yet again, in that one, I started by applying the LUT. I find that this LUT puts a little bit too much green in the shade, so I pull it back to a place of more neutrality, and then added the glow because it adds a little bit of glow in his face. This is my skin tone. This is my look. Here is, yet again, you see this blur vignette around him, focuses on the character, gives this kind of dreamy feeling, and it complements the blur of the movement. Grain, because we always add grain to all of our shot. When we started with grain, and then here is a vignette, but this time it's a light vignette, so darker on the edge. And here, this is the final touch, and this is basically the same thing for the next scene with minor tweaks. LUT, bring back the shadow, glow, skin tone, look a little bit greener here, blur here. You have this grain again, vignette, and final touch. So as you can see, his coat is the same color. And here we go to the next part after he raps. Here, as you can see, he's out of the van and finally realizes that he's not dead, he's alive. This part was meant to be fun. And he's like, oh, looking at the future, looking at the light. And then this is basically the end of the music video. As you can see, he's walking on the rocks. He's like, where is life going next? I don't know, but I'm gonna enjoy the ride. The colors are colder, but his movement and his expression happier. Oh, here, let me highlight that. Here is two different parts. He's jumping and then he lands somewhere else. So boom. Little trick to create more cohesion between your frames. As you can see here, smile on his face. I'm shooting down low, my camera angle very low because I wanted to have the sky. You can see a little bit of texture in the sky. The sky is warmer. His face is pinkish. He's embracing the nature. Going back to the van that kidnapped him. He's like, oh, finally their friend. And this is the end of the video. He found these people. He's happy. He's dancing. He's like, okay. Serenity by Ankvin. Directed by me. After this part, he's like, oh, God. Boom. He's in nature, enjoying himself. And as you can see here, the color grade is almost the same as the very beginning, but in a less desperate way. Like the blue here is overbearing, whereas here, it all plays with the emotion and the lightness of the dark. Whereas here, things are a little bit more lifted. Everything is a bit lighter. He's still having these very lax movement, very floaty. That's what we wanted. Have all these people having like those little fires. It was fun, smelled good. I'm going to be very transparent with you. Here I realize there is a continuity mistake. If you see here, this is where the fire is supposed to be. We had a complication where it was hard to get the fire going because it was very humid and wet. But we were losing light, so I was like, Logan, can you take care of the fire? Because if you're not taking care of it, I'm going to lose light and not be able to film. He said yes and did a fire, but in the rush, I didn't realize that this scene has no fire. The next one is very fiery. That's what happens when you're on a rush. It happens. He's approaching the fire, big smile on his face. The color grade is orange and the shades are blue. It highlights, create this kind of dimension in the image. He's dancing, grabbing the beer. He's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, almost about to fall. What a ride. Life is hard, but it's worth the party. We're almost done. We're gonna go through this last part of color grading because it's important to know that this image was like that. You can see a lot of sky. Yet again, my exposure was set for the clouds. I wanted to have enough details in there so I can have something for your eyes to grab on. I didn't want it to be a washed out white, but I wanted to retain enough details in the shadows, so that's why you can see that. It's slightly overexposed here, but you still have a lot of details everywhere. Yet again, I used the buttery LUT. Then here is, I'm lifting the shadows a little bit. I'm balancing it. I'm creating a little bit of color separation. I want the black to be fairly neutral. There's a little bit of grain, but this comes from the buttery LUT, which I don't mind. I like it. It makes all those greens even more green. And here is the classic glow. It creates this kind of depth. I like it. And then here is the look. A lot of blue-green in the shadows. The highlights are yellow I wanted to have this warmth in the highlight to contrast with the shades that are blue. My skin qualification, because I want his skin to be a little bit, pinker, more alive, and keep the blue in the shades again. And here, the grain is happening, and the last note is where I add this last little lick of contrast. So in this note here, it's almost the same. As you can see, I was losing light. I was focusing on his face. I wanted to have enough light so I can work around his face. There is not a lot happening around. Yet again, here is the buttery LUT. As you can see, this LUT is pretty good. Here is, I'm lifting the shades. I wanted to go grab a little bit of details, even if there is not much. Here is the glow, which is very minimal, but it's still there. It adds a little bit of softness. I'm injecting a lot of blue in the shadows. Here, I'm qualifying his face. This instance is very orange. I wanted it that way. And as you can see here, I'm keeping all the parts that are a little bit blue. And here is the grain. And here is the last contrast. As you can see, it's a very blue image, very soft, very vintagey, and it fits with the vibe of the video. And here is the end. I hope you enjoyed this deconstruction of a music video. If you want to go see other people do the same thing as I do with very different approach, you can go watch Danny Gevirtz, Joshua Martin. I'm going to link a bunch of them in the description because they're freaking amazing. I learned a lot from them, and I think they're good resources for people like you who are probably interested in that. So I'll link them in my description, and you can learn for days and days and become an amazing filmmaker yourself. So I'm going to conclude it all by saying thanks for watching. I hope you learned quite a bit during that. Go out, shoot something, shoot a music video with your friends, call someone and be like, hey mate, yeah, you make music, yeah, I have a camera, let's make something. This is how I basically started my career, by just doing random project like that. And this is how you can do it too. And this is how we all can have fun in life. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you liked it, please subscribe. If you didn't like it, please leave a nasty comment in the comment section. I like having death threats. It makes me feel alive. So bye-bye. I'm just gonna, drink my Canada Dry because I'm a sober boy. And yeah, see you.